my name is Lindsay and this is Waldorf Inspired Roots. In today's video, I'm going to do a paint with me video. I'm going to paint the watercolor painting that will be on our nature table for my 2.5-year-old and all the preschool kids who come that I watch and teach. The paintings that I do for the nature table change periodically every 3 to 6 weeks whenever the new unit changes, and we are getting ready to go into a unit that is going to be about transportation. And so the painting I'm going to do today is going to relate to that. Now, where I find inspiration for my paintings are typically either from a picture book that we will read during the unit or from just Google Images. And the one I found for today, I did just go onto Google Images. I'm going to go ahead and trace this in just a minute, but before I do, I just wanted to show you the paper. It's very thick watercolor paper. It is by Strathmore. The paper that I use is the 11 by 15, and what I do is I go ahead and quarter it, and then that's how I get this size. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is trace this. So this looks pretty good. It's actually still a hair darker than I would prefer it to be. So I'm just gonna kind of very carefully just try to lighten up some of those edges a little bit. So that looks pretty good. There we go. So I don't know if you can see that on camera, but now it's just very faint, this line that I have. So that'll be a lot better for the watercolor. Now, the supplies that I have, I'm using the Arteza opaque watercolors, and it comes with both of these 2 trays. I use these quite a lot. This is a fairly new one though, but it does also have the white, which I will probably be using, and so I'll show you how to use that. So I know that I need to do a line that kind of comes from here, and it's going to come to this first point right here. So I'm going to kind of swoop them outward. There we go. Okay, let's try this one. Try to follow the same line. There we go. Okay, so there is The lines I've already erased on the side, and then all these middle pieces. So now what I'm gonna do is the same thing I was doing before. I'm gonna go through and just very lightly erase these. Now if you see some of these lines through this, that is okay too. It'll just give it a little bit more of like an outlining effect, kind of. So I'm okay with that. Okay. There we go. I think that looks great. Okay. So I'm going to set this off to the side. I'm actually going to set it on this side. It's just going to be kind of, like I said, I'm going to do slightly different colors. So I'm going to set it off to the side. It's there if I feel like I need it, but I'm kind of going to do my own thing with the colors for this. Now I do have several paintbrushes. I just picked out a couple because I have some fine details that I'm going to be doing, as well as some slightly larger areas, but I think the main paintbrush that I'm going to end up using are probably like these two, and then this one for some of the fine details, but we'll see what I end up using. So the first one I'm going to start with is going to be this one though. The first color, I kind of want to do a little bit of a rainbow, but I kind of want it to be sort of backwards. So the color that I'm going to start with in this middle section is going to be like an orangey red. So I have these two colors next to each other, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this section wet, and then I'm going to get this section wet, which actually already has some reddish color on it. So I don't know if you saw that, kind of put it back to its original color. So then I'm gonna get my paintbrush wet again, and I'm gonna go ahead and pick up some of this red, a little bit of the orange, and then 2 taps back in the red. So I've got a little more red than orange, and now I can test my color. That's very close to what I wanted it to be, so I'm okay with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of start lightly painting. Now this is a wet on dry technique. A lot of my paintings I do wet on wet, but for this one in particular I was doing wet on dry because I want to keep I don't want them to blend together as much as it would on wet on wet. For this particular one I was wanting my edges to be a little crisper. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my paintbrush, I'm gonna get off most of the color, and then I'm gonna get it wet, but I am gonna wipe it off on the edges. But this way, I can smooth it out, and this will kind of take off a little bit of the color and make it look a little less vibrant, but still just to kind of take some of the color away. And it's really just about your own eye. Once you get it to a place that you feel like you like it, then you can transition to a different color, but you can always go back. Like this edge is bothering me a little bit, but I think I'm gonna wait and just leave it until I put another color down. Now the next color that I wanna do next to this is gonna be more of like a golden yellow. So I think I'm gonna mix, let's try this yellow. Now I'm gonna go in with this color so that it's a little bit muted, but not too much either. So I did a couple taps in the yellow, a couple taps in the more goldeny mustard color, sort of a muted mustard. And now I'm gonna go in, yep, that's pretty much what I was wanting. Maybe a hair more of this muted, yes, there we go. Really, it's just about playing around with colors. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is definitely far from perfect. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an artist, but I have fun with it. And I think that's what really matters, is having fun with your art. So now you see I've got the bulk of my color down, but it's a little streaky. So again, I'm gonna do what I did before, and I'm going to kind of pull my color. So it's just gonna kind of blend a little bit more. And this time, since I don't have actual color, I'm okay to go over this orange with just the tip of this paintbrush, because now, since I'm just pulling color, it'll kind of make them have a really nice transition. And you can pull as much or as little of this color as you want. I think I'm gonna stop there. Now this next color I wanna do, I kinda wanna do a greenish sort of color. Now I think the colors that I wanna mix for what I wanna do, kind of this forest green with maybe a drop of this green next to it to brighten it up just a hair. But I think I want mostly this forest green color. So we'll just do a little bit of this. Oops. So I did get a little water in here. I'm just gonna go ahead and wipe that off. Okay, so I do like that, but I actually want just a hint more of the slightly more vibrant greens. So let's go ahead and pull in a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. I may pull in a little bit more. We'll see how it rests next to this other color. So I'm gonna go ahead and round out this top like I did before. Okay, and then we're gonna come down this side. A little more color. I don't know if you noticed the last two times that I kind of pulled this color. I did this and then the hunter and then this, which is the opposite of what it did the first time, because I'm trying to pull in a little bit more of the vibrant green. That's the other amazing thing about watercolors too, is you can go over it and you can re-wet it and, you know, get the colors that you're looking for that way. And they'll continue to blend until they're totally dry, and even then you can usually still get something of a blend. Okay, so One thing that I do notice is I did get a little bit of this color on here, so what I'm gonna do, I'll show you a way to kind of fix that. So I got my paintbrush wet, and what I'm gonna do is just kind of clean it up. See? See how that went ahead and kind of got that green off the part I didn't want it to kind of be on. And now I may go back over that with a little bit of yellow, but while it was still wet, I was able to kind of clean it up. Now I'm gonna go through like I did the other times, wet my brush and just kind of make the colors a little bit more, not quite as streaky. Now I do want to leave a little bit of parts that I wouldn't call streaky, but where there's a little bit of a lack of color. And that's kind of the classic telltale sign of watercolors. I do want to fade this just a hair. Oops, okay. Let's fix that. It's kind of the same way I just fixed it. I did get a little more green on this side, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up. Perfect. Okay, so the yellow is the lighter color, so I'm struggling a little bit with this green, but I'm gonna start on the yellow side and kind of blend it that way because I wasn't wanting so harsh of a line. So I'm just kind of taking away some of the super opaque parts to give it a little bit of texture. Now, I don't know if you saw the little pills starting to form. Watercolor paper can do that sometimes, but then you can just get your paintbrush wet and just kind of very gently go across it, and it'll kind of pick up some of those little pills or whatever. I love how this is looking. So I think I'm gonna just kind of go across this yellow and just kind of try to pick up a little bit of the paint there as well. Perfect. Okay, so the next color that I'm gonna do is going to be a bluish color. Now, I think I wanna use this color and maybe this blue here. So let me get those wet. And I think what I'm gonna do is use mostly this color and then just a hint of this. But just like before, I may change my mind. Now we are getting smaller here, so I may have to change paintbrushes. But for now, I'm just gonna be very careful. Okay, so there's that one. Now I'm just gonna clean off my paintbrush like I did before and just kind of even out the colors just a little and then remove a little bit of the color. Okay, I'm liking how this one turned out. I kind of like how it has a little bit of an outline. Now the next color that I want to do is going to be a purple. And I think we're going to choose this purple with a dot of the blue from before, just to make it a little bit more of a blue purple. Now I have to be really careful with this one. Again, I may have to change paintbrushes, but maybe not. Perfect. Now I'm gonna wipe off some of the color. I'm gonna wipe my paintbrush pretty well. Then I'm gonna use the side of this paintbrush for this one because, or the edge rather. There, okay. So now I'm gonna do kind of a pinky red color. I'm gonna choose this kind of red color with a hint of this pink, but I do want it to be mostly red. So I'm gonna do red with just one dab of the pink. Oh, that's such a vibrant color, I love it. Okay. I think part of the reason that I liked the inspiration picture was because it was kind of a muted rainbow, and I did want mine to be more vibrant, but I did like the rainbow effect because it'll add a lot of color to my already sort of muted nature table. And I think I'm going to use a play silk as like a doily, or to lay on the thing, on the shelving part where I have my nature table, to kind of brighten up the space a little bit. There, I went ahead and picked up a little bit of that color. I'm gonna run along this edge just a hair. Perfect, I'm loving that. Okay, so there's that color. The next color that I'm gonna do is going to be sort of a reversal of what I did on this side. pull some of the color just to lighten it up just a little. Look like it has some slightly faded spots and things. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so the next color is going to be the yellow. And for this, I'm going to do kind of the same yellow that I did. And then we're gonna do the blue. So now we're gonna do the purple. Okay, I'm gonna wipe off my brush. I'm gonna pull a little bit of color here. Okay, so that's what that looks like. I think it turned out so cute. Okay, I'm gonna use my bigger brush. Now I'm gonna mix some colors. I'll show you how to use this white. So I wanna do a sky color behind the clouds. So in this picture, it doesn't have it, it just, she left it white, but I want all this to be a very, very pale, almost white color. So I'm just gonna do a tiny little, like the size of a Q-tip head or something for that. And actually, I'm going to clean my water one more time because I don't want it to mute my color. Okay, I went ahead and cleaned my water. I don't want it to get like mucky. So I'm gonna make sure my brush is clean. Now, the color that I'm going to pick for this is actually gonna be this kind of sky blue color, but I do want to clean it off to make sure it's not muckied already. I do want my paintbrush to be relatively wet, so I'm gonna pick up just a little bit of that color, and actually I'm going to dip it to kind of rinse off some of that color. I really want it to be a pale, almost white blue. So I don't know if you can see that there. And the way that I'm going to paint this on is I'm just gonna kind of swirl it up in there. Then I'll rinse my paintbrush. I'm gonna pick up some more of that color. It's okay if my paintbrush is pretty wet. Now I don't want to go down into where the basket is going to be. So I'll show you how I'm gonna tackle that. Now I don't know if you can see this on camera, but I know that my basket is gonna have the lip that starts here. So I'm gonna kind of come down to where I want that to be. Now, I also know that there's going to be a little bit where the strings are down here. So I'm gonna leave just a little space. And it's okay if I go onto it a little bit. I just want to have some part where it's a little vibrant. So I'm just leaving a tiny little space there. Now I'm gonna rinse my paintbrush totally. I'm gonna dry my paintbrush totally. And I'm gonna kind of use a dabbing method to kind of fan out these colors. Just lightly dabbing. And we're gonna fan this out. So this is just kind of muting those colors a little bit. So I'm gonna clean my brush again. I'm gonna dry my brush again. We're gonna go in and do it just a little bit more. If you get any of the little hairs from your paintbrush, you can get them off by just wetting your brush a little bit. So see how I'm making this really pale? I want this to be so, so pale. Just enough to look like sky without it being super bright. Now I'm just kind of dragging any excess down around where the basket will be. Okay, so I've done that. Now I can go in, I'm gonna go in with a gray color, and I'm actually gonna mix it in with a tiny little dot of purple. So I'll get both of those wet. So I'm gonna get mostly gray. Now I do want my brush a little drier than usual for this one. So I'm just gonna kind of get a little bit of color, a hair of the purple, a hair more of the gray. Now I want 8 strings coming from here. So we've got 1, I'm gonna get a little more color, and these can be fairly faint. 2, and I'm going to kind of go where the colors separate. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're actually gonna have 9 strings, and that's okay too. So there's my strings, my initial strings. And I'm gonna go through and just kind of clean those up a little bit. And then using the same string color, I'm going to attach, we're gonna do 2 strings to the corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're gonna do 2 strings to the back, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that kind of gives the outline of where it's attached and where the corners are for this basket. Now I am gonna do kind of a brownish color for the lip of the basket. And then also for the bottom edge of the basket. So we've got like that. We're just gonna kind of darken up just some of the edges here. So there you have it. And then I'm going to make it a little lighter. And the way I'm going to do that is to have my paintbrush be a little bit more wet. I'm actually going to dip it in the water just once. So I don't want the edge of my paintbrush wet. So just dry that off. And then we're just going to kind of fill this in and see how it's a little dark. So I'm actually going to use a little bit more water. I do want the basket to be the same color as the sides, I just want it to be a little lighter. There we go. Now the very last thing that I'm going to do is pick up some more of this blue color. I'm going to get my paintbrush a little bit wet. And now I'm just gonna kind of go on and dab. And I'm gonna do it very loosely because I can go back in, remember, with a wet paintbrush if I need to kind of clean it up a little bit. And this is gonna be very light just to kind of replicate sky or a sky color. See, I got my paintbrush wet just to kind of make it spread a little farther and lighten it up a bit. So I don't want to overlap these colors because it will mute out my colors. So when you get close to the basket and things, you definitely want to be careful not to overlap. But when you're away from the basket, you can kind of go a little quicker and freer. I may have to mix up a little bit more of this blue. Hopefully not, though. Okay, let's get up this last little bit of blue. Let's try to stretch it. Okay, and I think we stretched it as far as we can. Now I have a little bit of blue from before. Now I'm gonna pick up just this last little bit. I don't think it'll make too big of a difference. Nah. Just picking up a little bit of color that I had from another painting that I did. All right, and there you have it. So there is my hot air balloon. Now this was my inspiration picture. See, I did it a little bit more vibrant, a little more bubbled on the top. I think it looks fun and whimsical. And so slightly different color scheme, but that's how I use an inspiration picture to kind of paint my own picture, and that is the final outcome. Thank you for watching. I hope you had fun and I hope you learned something. And if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I would love to hear feedback in the comment section below. See you next time. Bye.